Afternoon all. So the training is underway for the half marathon, and unfortunately it did come to a little bit of a stop because I managed to fall over the dog last time I went for a run and tripped over, managed to pull a muscle in my chest, and it's not been very comfortable. In fact, I thought that I may have broken a rib. Fingers crossed that's not the case. At least I'm feeling a lot better now, and hopefully by the time you see this, I'll be back out pounding the pavements again. So anyway, February was a really busy month in our industry. We saw lots of changes in the investment lending space. One of them was a couple of the lenders pulled out of refinancing investment loans. So they will only now do investment loan refinances if you bring in an owner-occupied home loan to the bank at the same time. We saw one of the lenders bring down their LVRs, down to 70% for investment loans. And of course, a lot of lenders jumped on the bandwagon and increased interest rates for investors. So why are we seeing all these changes? It's not the first time, and it certainly won't be the last time. Over the last few years, the Australian government have been concerned that we may be heading towards a housing crash, that we're in a property bubble. Investors that once invested into equities were seeing really low interest rates and thought, hey, let's invest in the property market instead. We'd get better yields. Back in 2015, the regulators decided they'd put up a speed hump in to try and slow down that investment lending. They said that any bank could only grow their books by no more than 10%. That's just on the investment lending side. So not the overall book, just the investment lending space. At that time that was imposed, some of the lenders were already over their 10% allowance. And that meant that they had to pull out of the investment space altogether and just concentrate on home loans. Thankfully, those lenders are back into the market today, but it does mean that everybody has to stick within their 10% and therefore put in certain levers to try and stem the flow. Some of these levers that were pulled included reducing the amount of rent allowable for when servicing a loan. Most of them were at about 80% of the rent, and they came down to about 70%. We also saw negative gearing be reduced by some lenders and even removed by others. And finally, interest rates. Whereas everyone used to pay the same interest rate regardless of whether you're an investor or an owner-occupier, now we see a difference. We see a two-tiering system, one for investors and one for owner-occupiers, and guess what? The investors pay more. The regulators were keen that the banks were responsible with their lending across the board. And so therefore, they did an extensive review of the banks, their lending criteria and servicing calculators. And then we saw more changes come into play. We saw all debts being buffered. And what do I mean by that? So if you've got an existing debt at the moment, instead of taking it at the actual repayment that you would be paying, the banks are saying, well, hang on a minute, what if interest rates increase? If interest rates increase, then the rate on that existing debt is going to increase as well. So they want to see a buffer. So they would increase the interest rate on that particular debt. We also saw overtime, commission, bonuses being given a haircut of 20%. So instead of taking it 100%, they were taking it 80% from servicing purposes. Also, interest-only LVRs were imposed by some lenders. The regulators were concerned that, well, we've got these owner-occupiers who have got interest only against their property. How are they ever going to pay their loan back? What have they got in place to pay the debt off when it comes to the end of their 30 years? 2 years later, what does this all mean? It means you can't borrow as much money as you once used to be able to borrow. It also means that the investor pays a higher interest rate versus the owner-occupier, and it is a moving target. The latest thing under scrutiny is the living expenses. We're seeing some lenders now introduce a breakdown of your living expenses. So we now have to spend time working with our clients and working out exactly what do you spend on your clothing, what do you spend on your food, your utilities, etc. And one of those lenders has even gone as far as introducing a breakdown into 12 different categories. So with this in mind, it's important that you've got an expert on your side. And that's where a mortgage broker comes in. So I encourage anybody that if you have any loan requirements, that you contact a mortgage broker to help guide you through. And if you don't already have a mortgage broker, please feel free to reach out. Let's have a chat. Let's see if I can help you with your property needs. Until the next time, until next month, I look forward to catching up with you then. Take care and speak soon.